My name is Maureen McGill, and I'm a second-time author with OZARK Mountain Publishing. My first book was called Live from the Other Side, and it's about true messages that our loved ones give us after they die. And I wrote that with Nola Davis, co-authored that book. And now I'm on to my second book called Baby It's You, Messages from Deceased Heroes. And these fellows died in war, or in stateside accidents, or suicide. And it's really the love story on how these couples met and then how they meet now. They often meet through the senses. That's where the message comes through, is through the senses. The loved one might feel his touch or hear his voice in her ear, or she might smell him, or that song might come on the radio. And there are, I think, 31 stories in the book, and each one is attached to a song, which was their song. So it's a love story, really, on how they met and then how they meet now. There's also stories from mothers, Gold Star mothers who lost their sons in war, and also 3 surviving heroes that are also in the book that shared their mystical experiences that they had during war and during service. You know, it was an easy communication to have these stories told to me by these loved ones who had lost their love in war or service. Usually the military wants to know how they died, how's the family surviving, but the widow or the mom just really wanted to tell me this story that seemed so real to them. The experience really came from their heart. It was very reassuring that they received this message. And so in that sensibility, it was quite easy for these widows to tell me the story. You know, the stories are out there, quite a few stories, and we have a few stories in the book in suicide. There seems to be more and more cases of suicide now in the military in terms of the horrible tragedies that they have faced over in Iraq, Afghanistan. But once the word got out to these Gold Star widows and as well as mothers, it was an easy collection for me to receive these stories, these special stories. They shared these stories often over the phone with me. First they would share it over the email with me, and then I would have a conversation with them. You know, in my work, I was a university professor and I taught dance. And in dance, you know, I always felt that this awareness, you know, extends beyond the body. And so it was kind of easy for me to connect to those messages. I also became very interested in the International Association of Near-Death Studies. And these are where people have flatlined, gone over, and then come back. And they will often talk about these sensory experiences in that experience that they do. So that kind of opened the door for me to be interested more and more about how the message comes and how important that message is for healing the grief that we hold here in not being able to connect with our loved ones. So my goal in this book really is to share the unconditional love that never dies. To me, love is eternal and it never dies. And we think when the body goes, that's it, it's over, it's done, you know, it's flatlined, he's dead, he's in the cemetery. But really, they're not, they're so with us. And the message confirms that. How that song would come on the radio at the least expected time. I mean, what are the chances for that to happen, you know? What are the chances for the child who, 2 children who are getting on the school bus, they turn and look on the front steps and their mom is waving to them and both of them turn stark white and they run over to the porch and then mom says, what's wrong, what's wrong? And they go, we just saw Dad waving to us, you know? And they were stark white, but they were so excited to know that their dad was there on their first day of school. So, you know, it's just that kind of reassuring message that I would like to give to those in this world that love is eternal and that it never dies. I would like to share with you a beautiful poem that I wrote at the beginning of the book on how the couples really met in true life and then how they meet now in the messages. So I connected the stories to a wonderful song by the Reflections called Just Like Romeo and Juliet. All right, now I'm speculating, wonder what tomorrow's gonna really bring. Just like Romeo and Juliet, just like Romeo and Juliet. We met in the laundry room in college. He carried my underwear to my dorm room. In high school, at a wrestling tournament. Through my cousin. At a country bar on a Thursday night. At a dance club. At a costume party with mask and a hat. On Instant Messenger. He was 17, I was 19. Through his best friend Jeremy, in grade school when we played on the playground, on Facebook, and we were married after 1 month at the pawn shop, on a blind date on New Year's Eve, in the convertible when he pulled up right next to me, at Burger King where we both worked, on a website called Hot or Not. We exchange photos. When he was a football player and I was a cheerleader. But we meet now in my dreams, in the hallway when I smell him, in bed when I feel his skin touch mine, when I see his silhouette, his shoulders, his head, and how he held out his arms like he was holding a blanket. When the song comes on in the elevator, in church, or in a restaurant. When I find pennies on the ground, in the weirdest places. When the basketball bounces on the court and nobody's there. When I see him staring at me from the waist up when I'm in bed. When I find the Dutch key ring in the middle of the desert from him. When I meet the police officer who's wearing your memory bracelet. When I hear your voice saying, my son. When I find the heart-shaped sticker on a leaf. When the digital frame stops for no reason at your photo. When he comes to me with a message. And when I hear his voice singing his favorite song, just like Romeo and Juliet, just like Romeo and Juliet. So that's the way that the couples met, and then how they meet now. And it's so touching because all the senses seem to be involved, and also music and sound that comes through with that special song that comes on the radio for them. Love never dies. It's only the body we cannot hold. New breath follows us in dreams and visions, waking magical moments that feel very real. Songs fuel our hearts and dance in our memories. That imprint never leaves. It's all good, it's all bad, and it's all ugly. And it's all beautiful, and it's everlasting love. I also included 3 stories about 9/11 or two stories about 9/11 because I really considered that a kind of military service that they did. They died for our country. And so there are two stories in the book about heroes that died in 9/11. Firefighter that died in 9/11, and a financial fellow who worked in the 105th floor of the Twin Towers. And there was a beautiful story there in that 105th floor. This gal, Sally, she grew up with this fellow who worked on the 105th floor. She herself worked there as well. They worked for quite some time, but she decided to quit in 1993 because of the first bombings that happened there at the Twin Towers. And so she said, but that day she was not working in the building, and she still had that close friend who was working at the 105th floor, and he was not found afterwards. And the only thing that was found was his watch. So for several days, she'd go up and down the streets because people were holding up signs of loved ones and messages that, they might be able to see a sign that they saw that body or saw that loved one. And what happened was, even her dad was a firefighter, and he was looking for him as well, but they didn't. But they did find his watch, but that's all they found. And so what happened in the end was she was walking. It was the sunny days, 8 days after 9/11. She was walking along the sidewalk, and all of a sudden, it was a little bit crowded on the sidewalk, All of a sudden, she felt this hand come around her waist. And she looked to her right and she looked to her left, and the sun was just beaming in because it was warm, and it was still ashy, and smoke was kind of everywhere. And there was nobody to her right and nobody to her left. And all of a sudden, she heard Vinny's voice saying, I'm okay. I love you. It's okay. It's okay. Everything's okay, and I want you to tell everybody that I love them. I just want you to tell everybody that I love them. And she said, I just was totally shocked because his voice was so clear, and I knew it was him. And it was such a relief for her because she knew that he had crossed over because of that experience. And it was a relief to her that she made a connection with him because she felt so lost by not knowing where he was. So it was really quite beautiful. So there's a foreword by my book by Reverend Bill McDonald. And Reverend Bill McDonald is a Vietnam veteran who serves as a chaplain now in a non-denominational way in helping veterans across the country kind of heal from the grief and from the sorrow. He's been through probably 6 or 7 near-death experiences, and I was very touched that he was willing to write the foreword for my book. And one of the things he said to me is that about it is that the book is truly a sacred place for the memories of those who have contributed, but it's also an altar of hope that heaven's door is not really closed to those who love. And I really like that. So I'm going to say that one more time. This book is a sacred place for the memories of those who have contributed, but it's also an altar of hope that heaven's door is not really closed to those who love. So, baby, it's you, messages from deceased heroes. The knock at the door brings that message that the brides or the mothers or the fathers really never want to hear in their heads, and then they hear it over and over. But it's from that moment on that the love messages really begin to unfold. And it might be the song, it might be the fragrance, it might be the touch or the kiss on the lips. But it tells us truly, that's the way love goes. We are together again at last.